Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Matthew Rose, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is leading seaman Bianca Lestuzzi. We are honoured to acknowledge Senator Mr. Hervé Moret, Chair of the Committee of Land Use Planning and Sustainable Development of the French Senate, accompanied by His Excellency Christophe Lecordier, Ambassador, Embassy of France, and Mr. Pini Henare, Member of Parliament, New Zealand. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors and students on behalf of the following schools. From New South Wales, Oyster Bay Public School and Presbyterian Ladies College, Armidale. From Victoria, Cornish College, Bangholm. I now ask you to please stand and join in singing the national anthem, which will be led this evening by the Colorado Children's Chorale, United States of America. If you could please stand. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Students, you may now be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection. Thank you, gentlemen.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private Geoffrey Hargrave, who was killed fighting in the Dardanelles during the First World War. Geoffrey Lewis Hargrave was born in 1892, the only son of 6 children of Lawrence and Margaret Hargrave of Woollahra in Sydney. Geoffrey's father, Lawrence, was a well-known engineer, explorer, astronomer, inventor and aeronautical engineer who invented the box kite and advanced the design of aircraft in the years before the first manned aerial flight. Geoffrey Hargrave attended Sydney Grammar School and afterwards studied engineering and worked as a junior draftsman. He enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force in September 1914, and after periods of training at Rosebery Park in Sydney and Broadmeadows Camp in Victoria, sailed with the 1st Australian Troop Ship Convoy as an original member of the 13th Battalion Machine Gun Section. Originally destined for the fighting in Europe, the troop ships were diverted to Egypt following Ottoman Turkey's entry into the war. Hargrave spent several months training with his battalion at Mena Camp before Australian and New Zealand troops were drawn into Allied plans to force a passage through the Dardanelles. He landed on Gallipoli on the 25th of April 1915, coming ashore with troops from the 4th Brigade that afternoon. Over the following days, the 13th Battalion was involved in defending the tenuous hold Australian and New Zealand troops were able to gain on the precipitous terrain against the growing Turkey resistance. By the end of April, the battalion, along with the rest of the 4th Brigade, defended a sting of positions, Quinn's, Courtney's and Steele's Post, on the heights above Pope's Hill. On the 3rd of May, Geoffrey was involved in a combined Australian and New Zealand effort to better their situation by capturing a hill known as Baby 700, a position overlooking the Anzac positions that was occupied by the Turks. After a short but furious bombardment by the Royal Navy, the infantry advanced on their objective, only to be met with a fusillade of Turkish rifle and machine gun fire. The 13th Battalion dug in well short of their objective and advanced no further during the attack. The 4th Brigade's assault on Baby 700 was costly and unsuccessful, but troops of the 13th Battalion continued to hold their gains until they were relieved several days later. By then, they had suffered over 80 men killed and over 200 wounded. Among the dead was Geoffrey Hargrave, whose remains were never recovered from the battlefield. He was 21 years old. Today his name is listed on the nearby Lone Pine Memorial alongside 5,000 Australian and New Zealand soldiers who died on Gallipoli and have no known grave. The historical records do not document the grief and sorrow of the Hargrave family at having lost their only son in the war. We do know, however, that Lawrence Hargrave died of peritonitis at his home at Woollahra 6 weeks later. Newspapers at the time speculated that the news was a great blow to him and undoubtedly hastened the end. Geoffrey Hargrave is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among more than 60,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Geoffrey Hargrave, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Ladies and gentlemen, please now stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, We will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozieres, or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial, and we wish you a very good evening.